So is Arch elitist? Now, I don't know if it's only like a meme, and like there's no one who seriously thinks that way, but in case there are, then that's really strange, and I completely disagree with saying that Arch is some sort of an elitist operating system. You see, people talk about the installer, they say that it's like this difficult installation. Well, it's not that difficult. I've installed now hyperbola GNU+Linux, and it's basically the same way as installing Arch. It's basically installed the same exact way almost, so it might as well be the same installation. And now that I've installed it, am I suddenly some kind of an elitist user? No, that's nonsense. There's nothing to it. It's not even difficult. Like really, you can just do it based on like following some tutorial or just the guides. So there's nothing elitist about that. There are basic things like partitioning the disk and whatever you might need to do, but that's not exclusive to the Arch. You can do that with any other installer. So why do people say that the Arch operating system is suddenly so elitist because like you have to do these things manually? You can partition your hard drive on Debian. When you are installing Debian, you can partition your hard drive there. Or any other distro. Debian is as an example. You know, actually I would argue that you might even learn more about GNU+Linux installation from installing Slackware than you do from installing Arch. Like if your goal is to learn, I've heard people also say this, that like Arch is somehow like this learning experience. Fuck that. You learn more from installing Slackware than installing Arch. At least I argue that. Now why? I'm not gonna really get into the details, so you're not gonna get an answer for that, but anyway, I still say that like Slackware installation. Installing Slackware, you learn more from that than Arch. So why is this weird idea going out there that like there is this operating system that's like this elitist operating system, and then you're supposed to switch to that eventually, or it's some sort of a learning experience? It's all nonsense. I don't know why that is a thing. It's not that difficult of an installation. You just follow some guide. You know, Mental Outlaw has a tutorial on YouTube installing Arch, and it's like 20 minutes, the tutorial. You know, it's easy if you just follow a tutorial like that. So the installation process itself is not anything that would make anyone an elitist user, and what you learn from it, it's not really that special to Arch. You could learn all that from any other distro. You can install Debian without desktop environments and you can get all that desktop installation, but what about the base things? The base system. Oh, but you learn the base installation. Well, fuck that. All you do is backstrap base. What do you learn from that? Nothing. Like, what's the difference? On both systems, like, if you're installing Debian, you do the installer, you run the installer, and then if you don't install a desktop environment, you can install it manually. Well, on the Arch, if you want to install desktop environment, you can do that manually. Well, you have to do it manually, basically, but what's the difference? Well, because Arch has to be installed all the base stuff. But like I mentioned, it's just backstrap. You know, there's nothing. There's not special. You don't learn anything. What do you learn about the base? What do you learn about any of that? It's just a base. You just do backstrap base. What the fuck do you learn from that? Nothing. There's nothing to learn. It's not any different from just hitting enter in the desktop installer. Debian installer, I mean. Just keep hitting enter when you're installing Debian. That's the same as just writing backstrap install base, whatever the command was. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's easy still. Just do that. Or what, the time zones? Well, who cares about that? What are you learning about the GNU+Linux operating system from setting the time zone? You set the time zone in Debian installer. You can set the time zone there. I'm installing Debian. I select the time zone there. Oh, but you have to write it in the terminal. Who cares? What's the difference? You're selecting the time zone. You're selecting the damn time zone. What the fuck do you learn about that? Like, people, why do people have this attitude that, like, this Arch is some sort of a elitist operating system? What, you select a time zone? You do that on every other distro. What, you have to manually install the base? All you do is you backstrap base. You don't learn anything from that. That's a joke. It's a fucking joke. I don't get it. Is it because it's hard to maintain or whatever, because it breaks? Well, that's a bad thing. If it breaks, if the operating system breaks and you have to constantly fix it, that's not an elitist operating system, that's just a piece of garbage that breaks. Now, I'm not saying that Arch breaks all the time, but like, if there's this idea that like you have to like maintaining or whatever, well, that's just a bad thing then. I don't get it. Why do people say that it's just a good operating system? If you want, it has the latest software or whatever. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed has latest software. OpenSUSE Tumbleweed is a rolling release, it gets latest software. It doesn't get it right away immediately after the software is published. It tests them for a while, so there might be like a week or two of delay, but it's still the latest software, that's the same. I don't really see why a couple of weeks of difference would bother anyone. I don't really see why it would need the absolute latest, like on the very day it's published, the latest software versions. That's just weird. Well, I guess there's someone who might want that, but that's just weird. I don't think that's necessary. Anyway, yeah, well, what is it? What is it? What do you do in the installer? The time zone, the partitioning disks, backstrap base. You select a keyboard, the keyboard map, whatever, key map language stuff. All of that is done in the Debian installer. The only difference is that in the Arch you have to manually write the terminal commands. So is that the elitist? Does that make you an elitist user because you have to manually type that? Well, all you're doing is following the damn guide. What's the difference between letting the Debian installer have you automatically go from step to step versus looking at a guide and going through the guide and copying the commands step by step? What's the difference? I don't see a difference. That's the same. I don't see the difference. It's the same fucking thing. But there's nothing elitist about Arch. It's the same thing as any other distro. You just have to write the commands manually. So it's only the process of hitting the keyboard that's the difference. That's silly. That's not an elitist distro. That's just silly. That's a joke. Now, I'm not saying that Arch is a bad operating system, that the Arch operating system is a joke. What I'm talking about is that this idea that Arch is some elitist operating system, that's a joke. Arch itself isn't a joke, that's not what I'm talking about. So don't misunderstand me, I'm not hating on Arch. I'm just saying that the idea that Arch is supposedly some elitist system, that's a joke. No, it's not, that's a fucking joke, that doesn't make any sense. That's silly. That's silly. I didn't learn anything from it. Like, so there is this idea, like I mentioned, this learning experience or whatever. I didn't learn shit. I already knew everything. The only thing I had to learn was just nothing really. What was there to learn? Nothing. There's nothing to learn. I already knew how to partition disks. I already knew what time zones are. Well, the specific commands used to backstrap base, well, yeah, maybe I guess I learned that, but who cares? Backstrap base, well, that's just the command to use to that. Like, there's nothing there. There was no learning experience. Now, you can use it to learn things, I guess. If it's your first thing you're ever installing, well, I guess you can learn things there, but you could just as well install it. You can just as well learn it anywhere else, on any other installer. So, there's nothing really special about the Arch installer, is what I'm trying to say. It's not that special. So, yeah, this is a pretty rambly speech recording, but who cares? Yeah, it's not really a special distro. There's nothing special about it. Anything that you could learn, yeah, sure, it's true. You can learn partitioning in Arch, and you can learn all these other things, but you don't have to do it on Arch. There's nothing special about Arch having. There's nothing unique about Arch specifically that makes you learn everything about GNU+Linux. That's nonsense. That's just nonsense. You can learn all that on other distros. There's nothing special about Arch. So yeah, this whole elitist thing, it's a fucking joke. It actually, I don't know, it might just be some meme where people just make fun of this concept and nobody actually believes it is. But it has to have like some sort of an origin. This idea has to come from somewhere. Someone somewhere must have believed that it's somehow like some superior thing, some elitist thing, right? It has to have some origin. Someone must have thought that way. Well, that's nonsense. There's nothing special about it. Everything that can be learned there can be learned elsewhere. And the installer, well, it's as easy as any other. You know, if it's your first time installing an operating system, any installer will be looking difficult. Even Debian's installer where you just hit enter, even that's gonna look difficult to you if you've never installed an operating system. I already mentioned the only difference between the Debian installer and the Arch installer. In Debian, you hit enter and it goes by step. It goes through step by step all the processes, and Arch, you read the guide and go step by step. There's no difference. So no, it's not an elitist distro. That's nonsense. You don't need to switch to Arch to be some proper GNU+Linux user. That's nonsense. It's a joke.